What's up, everybody? Thank you for joining us today for the 6th episode of the Not Five Guys podcast, where we've got five guys that talk about sports. I'm your host, Siraj, and here's who we're joined by.
What it do? I'm Kevin.
What's up? I'm Nikhil.
How's it going, everyone? It's Phil.
And I'm Jerry.
All right, and our focus today on this episode is going to be the upcoming NCAA conference tournaments. So we're going to be spending time talking about the different teams that we think have a chance to win each of the major basketball conferences that are upcoming. And we also have a betting hotline segment in addition to a You Heard It Here First, which we haven't had for a little while. And of course, we're going to end with our weekly predictions.
All right, so the first thing that we're going to talk about today is betting hotline. So let's take a listen in.
Hello?
Yo, what's up, Phil? This is not Kevin again. I just want to call and say thank you. Last month, I don't know if you remember me, but last month I called you asking for some advice and put my entire life savings down, and I won a lot of money.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Well, glad I could help you out.
Yeah, and my wife doesn't even know. She thought I got a promotion or something.
Who are you talking to?
I'm talking to Phil from Betting Hotline.
Phil from Betting Hotline? At 3 in the morning? Who is this?
It's Phil from the Betting Hotline.
Okay, well then, what are you wearing, Phil from Betting Hotline?
Sweatpants?
Well, since you're so good at predicting games and being such a good bettor, why don't you tell me who I should pick in the Rockets-Clippers game this week?
Well, I guess if I was making a bet on the Clippers-Rockets game this Thursday, looking at the lines, you've got the Rockets as a 1-point favorite at home right now. The over-under is set at 237 points. This is a tough game. You've got two of the best teams in the Western Conference. But I think for me, I'm going with the Rockets first half money line here, minus 115. That's going to be your best bet to make money. The Rockets this year are 35-25 first half against the spread, and at home they're 20-9 against the first half spread. So that's a key point that I'm looking at, where all they have to do is stay even with the Clippers and potentially win it by a point. Also, since they've gone small at the deadline, the only team they've lost to is the New York Knicks this past Monday, which was a tough game for them. They got out-rebounded by 31 because the Knicks have a lot of height. The Clippers don't have the height that the Knicks do, which is surprising to say that the Knicks are better than the Clippers at something. But that's the one area where I don't think the Clippers have that big of an advantage. And so the Rockets' height isn't going to hurt them. I think they should be able to take care of business. But I'm taking them on the first half here because Kawhi Leonard is so good at the end of a game. Him plus Lou Williams could light it up and give this game to the Clippers. But I think the first half is where you can make your money.
Okay, well, thanks for all that information, Phil from Hotline Betting or Betting Hotline. I would have expected you to wear khakis, but I guess sweatpants are okay as well.
Wow, okay, that was an interesting betting hotline segment. I'm glad at least we got a guest appearance by not Kevin, but not Kevin's wife decided to come onto the show as well. So hopefully, Phil, your advice works out for them and they're able to make a lot of money.
We're now going to transition over to our main focus for today, which is the NCAA tournament the NCAA conference tournaments. So, Phil, why don't you give us an explanation about what we're going to do, and why don't you set the stage for us?
So given that we're talking about college basketball, we thought we'd bring you back to college to your RA's favorite get-to-know-you game, 2 truths and a lie. But to put a little twist on it, we're doing 2 favorites and a dark horse. So this is going to be looking at all the major conferences in college basketball and breaking down 2 favorites to win their conference championships taking place next week, and give you 1 dark horse to look out for that might surprise you. To start it off, we're going to look at a conference near and dear to our hearts, the Pac-12.
Yeah, so the team that I am going to be talking about today is the Oregon Ducks. So just a little bit of background about them. So they're second in the Pac-12 right now, and they're ranked 13 in the nation. They're sitting at 22-7. So I actually think that they are the team that's going to win the Pac-12 tournament. Right now, they have a very, very solid resume. Like I said before, they're 13th in the nation, and they have big wins over Houston, Seton Hall, Michigan, Arizona twice, and UCLA, which was a pretty big win. And they've also beaten every team in the Pac-12. So obviously, not only do we know that they can win against all the Pac-12 teams just by virtue of them being a good team, they have the evidence and they have the proof that they've already done so. Additionally, last year, they won the Pac-12 tournament as a 6th seed in the conference tournament. And I think that they really have the great chance to not only be a great team, which they are right now, but even in the case that they're slumping or things like that, they have the ability to just turn it on and get hot and carry into the multiple games that go on in the Pac-12 tournament, because we saw them do it last year. As a 6th seed, they won the tournament. And this feeling of being hot, it actually carried them into the tournament. As a 12th seed, they made it to the Sweet 16, and they barely lost to the eventual champions, the University of Virginia, in the Sweet 16.
Yeah, I really like Oregon going into this tournament, but I also really like Arizona. Arizona is ranked really well by a lot of different metrics. They're 6th by simple rating system. They're 17th in KenPom, which is first in the Pac-12. And let's talk a little bit about their road to potentially winning this conference championship. They face, if standings are as they would be today, they would face Oregon State in the first round, who they've beaten in their one game that they've played before. Then they'd face ASU in the second round, who they've beaten by 30 and lost to by 1. Then they would play Oregon, who, as you said, are one of the top-ranked teams in the country, who they've lost to twice, but only by 1 point each time. And then they would face UCLA, who hopefully will get a little smattering of information about in the upcoming future. But they've lost twice to them, most recently by 5. The team is quite good on defense. They hold their opponents to the 32nd lowest offensive rating, which for reference, in D1, there are 353 teams, so that's top 10%. They score the 78th most points, and they allow the 61st least. So it's a lot of traditional, Sean Miller type basketball that you're seeing.
I think the hottest team right now in the conference and probably in NCAA is the UCLA basketball. They're currently on a 7-game winning streak. Since that Oregon loss, they are ranked 24th in the nation in adjusted offensive efficiency. And when the difference of the game is within 5 points, they are 5-0. This team can handle the pressure and win big games. And with Pac-12 tournament, that's what you need. Win big games with close points. And I think UCLA will win the Pac-12 tournament.
Jerry, you're right. In the Pac-12 tournament, you need to win win big games, obviously. And the reason why I'd like to close with why I think Oregon is going to win is because ultimately, in order for your team to go out and win these games, there's a lot of pressure. And you're dealing with 18 to 22-year-old kids. And ultimately, it's going to come down to coaching. I think that Oregon has the best coach in the Pac-12, one of the best coaches actually in the country, in Dana Altman. And they also have one of the best point guards in the country as well with Peyton Pritchard. So this combination of veteran leadership with their senior guard in Peyton Pritchard, who's averaging 25-4, combined with their fantastic coaching of Dana Altman, is ultimately going to carry them to a conference tournament victory, similar to how we saw them actually reach the Final Four a couple years back in 2017.
When we talk about coaching, who's winning Coach of the Year? The UCLA head coach. It's not the Oregon, it's UCLA. And I believe that with the head coach they have, they can win in the conference championship.
All right, so moving on to probably what most people would call the best conference in college basketball this year, the Big Ten. For me, the favorite is the Michigan State Spartans. Similar to Serge mentioning how Oregon's got a senior guard and an experienced head coach, Michigan State's led by Cassius Winston, candidate for the Naismith Player of the Year, and their head coach, Tom Izzo, he's a legend in college basketball. A little bit about the team in general. They're sitting at 21-9 overall. They're 7th on KenPom rating. They're up to the 4th best team according to Sagarin. They're 7th in net, but they're only 16th in the AP poll because they had a down start to the year after coming in ranked the number 1 team in the AP poll before the season. They dropped some early games, but they've turned it on strong lately. They had a huge win at Maryland on Saturday. They picked up another one against Penn State tonight, both on the road. So this team has turned it on strong as of late. And I think the experience between Cassius Winston and Tom Izzo is what's going to take them to the championship in the Big Ten.
I think Michigan State are pretty good, but you know who else is tied number 1 in the conference? Maryland. They're 13-6 in the conference. They will be probably the top seed in the tournament, and they will probably get 2 games by. And with that amount of rest, they can reset because they have been losing 3 out of their last 4 games, and they usually don't choke, but you know today they decided to choke to Rutgers. Before today, they don't choke at all. They were undefeated against quad 2 to quad 4 teams. So I was like, these teams don't choke, but losing to Rutgers, you know, changes my mind. But still, they don't choke a lot. They will still win the conference and beat Michigan State.
Phil and Jerry, you both talked about really good teams in the Big Ten, but I am going with the underdog Michigan. And like you said, Phil, the Big Ten is one of the most exciting conferences in basketball this year. And with Michigan being 9th ranked in the conference, they're still a team that a lot of Big Ten opponents are hoping to avoid in the conference. They have a pretty stacked team with 5 players averaging double digits. They've won 7 of their last 10 games. And even though they've had 11 losses this year, all but 2 of them have been single-digit losses. And despite many people thinking they're a long shot, I think with a little bit more consistency, they've got a good chance at the Big Ten title.
Yeah, I definitely think the Big Ten, being such a competitive conference, is going to be hard to pick. Like I said, to me, Michigan State's the favorite, but I think both the teams you guys mentioned have a good shot, as well as probably 8 other teams, just how deep this conference is this year.
Yeah, while Michigan might be a long shot, if you jump into the Big 12 conference here, Kansas is the exact opposite of that. At the time that we're recording our podcast, Kansas is standing pretty tall right now with a 14-game winning streak. They have no losses this year outside of the first quadrant, which really shows how consistent they are. And they have the most Q1 wins in the NCAA this year and second most Q2 wins. They're number 1 in KenPom, and they have the best odds not just to win in the Big 12, but also in all of March Madness coming up this year.
Yeah, pretty much everyone has singled out Kansas as the team to beat, but the team that has beat them this year, or one of the 2, is Baylor. And I really want to talk about Baylor because I think Baylor has a really good shot at dethroning Kansas for the Big 12 championship. They trail only Kansas in simple rating system. They're 5th. Kansas is 1st. They're 3rd in KenPom, again, behind only Kansas. But I want to talk about what Baylor does really well. And one of those things is forcing turnovers. They're 16th in steal percentage and they're 30th in block percentage. Again, out of 353 teams, that's pretty good. And they're 9th in offensive rebounding percentage. And I think that in a single game tournament, especially if you see Baylor's road to the title would be West Virginia, who they've beaten twice, and Texas Tech, who they've beaten, and then they would face Kansas in what would effectively be the de facto title game. They would be playing they would be playing a single game to win it, and I think getting steals, forcing turnovers, and honestly being quite good on defense as well is going to end up getting them to the title.
So I'll admit, coming up with a dark horse for the Big 12 was pretty hard. I think the top 2 teams in this conference are far and away the best. But if I had to pick a team right now that I think's got an outside shot, it has to be Texas. I think they've come on strong as of late. They've got a 5-game win streak after pulling off a close win against Oklahoma tonight, winning on a last-second three-pointer. And looking at this team, I think they've got a pretty easy path to the 3 seed in the Big 12 tournament. All they have to do is beat Oklahoma State and then Texas Tech has Kansas, so that's probably a loss. So they've got a 3 seed in this tournament. And then the question is, can they get hot and beat both Baylor? They'd have to play Baylor and Kansas, but I think they might be able to pull it off. Their defense is the 26th best in the nation, according to KenPom. So if they can lock those teams down on defense, and then they, like I said, they've been playing well as of late. So Shaka Smart's got his team on fire, and I think they could carry it into the Big 12 tournament.
He's been a pretty big disappointment at Texas, though, I will admit.
Yeah, but he's got them playing on strong. They're probably going to make the tournament now. Yes, he's not. They're not the team that they used to be of Texas, but hey, they're coming on strong now.
I will say I don't think defense is a great thing to face Baylor and Kansas at, especially considering Baylor, for example, is 49th in slowest pace of play, as well as 15th lowest shooting percentage, or true shooting percentage that they allow to opponents, and 21st for effective field goal percentage. And I know Kansas is a little better at both of those numbers.
Yeah, it's a tough one for sure, but I'll be excited if it does end up Kansas-Baylor. That's going to be a really good conference championship game. So moving forward, we want to hit on all the other the major conferences. We're going to just do it a little bit quicker. So starting off with the SEC, I've got Kentucky as the favorite in the SEC tournament. They've already locked up the number 1 seed. They've got 4 legitimate NBA guys that all can do different things for them, and I think they're the easy shot to win the SEC.
I'm talking about Auburn because I think they have the best chance of taking down Kentucky. They're the only team in the conference that has beaten Kentucky this year, besides Tennessee and South Carolina. And they've got Isaac Okoro back, who's their second leading scorer. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think, those are the obvious 2 favorites in this conference. But South Carolina potentially has a shot. I think South Carolina has a pretty good road. Obviously, the big problem for them is they'd have to face consecutively LSU, Auburn, and then Kentucky. But they are one of the only teams in the conference to beat Kentucky. They beat Virginia earlier in the year, and they're pretty good on defense, so that would be their calling card here.
Yeah, switching gears a little bit from the SEC to now talk about one of the most historic conferences in all of college basketball, the ACC. I'm sticking to my guns with pretty strong favorites to win these conference tournaments. So for the ACC, I'm obviously going to go with Duke. So obviously they have a lot of history. They've won their conference tournament 25 times. But aside from the history, they're also a spectacular team this year. They're ranked number 12 in the country. They obviously have the most talent top to bottom out of any other team in the conference, with Vernon Carey at center and Cassius Stanley and Trey Jones in the backcourt as well. So you've got legit NBA guys on your team. And also, like I said before, I think coaching is really important, especially this time of the year. So being led by Coach K and the studs that start for them is going to be really tough to beat, especially in the ACC tournament.
I'm going for Florida State. They're currently 14-4, second in the conference. They have lost to some good team, Virginia and Duke. But, they beat Louisville twice, the number 1 team in the conference, and they're also ranked number 17 in KenPom. I think they can continue and pull out big wins in ACC tournament.
My dark horse, even though they're not really a dark horse, is Virginia. They're currently on a 6-game winning streak, and they just recently beat Duke, who is the number 1 in KenPom in their conference. And Virginia also has held their opponents to the least amount of points per game out of all NCAA teams. So that defense will definitely help them in the ACC tournament.
Staying on the eastern half of the U.S., let's look at the Big East, where I've got the favorite as Seton Hall. They're the likely number 1 team in the tournament. They're led by Miles Powell, who's a candidate for Naismith Player of the Year. And this week they're announcing the final 10. They're narrowing the list to 10, and I think he's going to make that. He's been one of the most exciting players in college basketball this year, and I think he's got a good chance to carry Seton Hall to the Big East title.
Creighton is also another good team in the Big East. They're currently 11-5, and they're tied second. They have already beat Butler Villanova to prove that they're actually a strong candidate to win. And coming up this week, they will be playing Seton Hall, and with their number 11 in KenPom, I think they have a shot in beating Seton Hall and claim the Big East soon in the tournament.
Yeah, I'm gonna finally go with a dark horse here for the Big East tournament, and they're actually a really big dark horse because they've been struggling a lot lately. But I'm gonna take Marquette. And the only reason I'm taking Marquette is because I'm counting on Marcus Howard to go on an absolute tear. So obviously he's the most prolific scorer in the NCAA right now. He's averaging 28 points per game. But in order for them to win, it's not just going to need to take 28 points per game. He's going to need to channel some of his most spectacular performances of this year in consecutive games. And what I mean by that is he's scored more than 35 points 8 times this season. He scored more than 50 once and more than 40 twice. He's going to need something of a historic, like Kemba Walker-esque run in order for them to take it. But I think if he does that, Marquette could come away with the Big East tournament champions.
And last but not least, we're going to jump into the AAC. I am going to take the favorites, Houston, to win the conference title.
H-Town.
They're currently 11th in KenPom, and their closest conference opponent is 41st, and so that shows a big gap in terms of ranking for Houston. And additionally, they have a great player in Nate Hinden, who is a regular double-double machine. And then the team is also top 5 in the country in terms of offensive rebounding, which is going to be really important. And then they also have a very talented guard in Quentin Grimes, who, once he becomes more consistent, will play a large role for the team.
My pick for AAC is the Cincinnati. They have already beaten Houston and Tulsa, and they're currently third in the conference, and I believe they can win. Most importantly, they have an interesting mascot. Do you know what their mascot is?
A bearcat?
Bearcats. Like, what is the bearcat? It's really interesting to me.
It's when you mate a bear and a cat. You get a bearcat.
I don't think that's how they work, Phil. But
Hey, you're the doctor here. You should be the one telling us about biology.
I don't know what a bearcat is, but like, hey, they got a cool mascot, so I'm rooting for them.
All right. Well, I want to talk about why I'm sad. I'm sad because James Wiseman would have made Memphis one of the best teams in the entire country. And I genuinely believe that, and here's why. James Wiseman, I mean, he played 3 games, but he was 20-10 in those games. This team is possibly one of the best defensive teams in the entire country. They play the 29th highest pace, and they still hold opponents to the 3rd lowest offensive rating. Now, to explain how crazy that is, who's first and second in holding opponents to offensive rating are Virginia and Liberty, who are also number 1 and 2 in slowest pace of play. So they're holding their opponents to not many baskets on not many opportunities. However, Memphis is holding their opponents to almost no points off the 29th most possessions per game. Of course, they're doing this by allowing the lowest opponent's effective field goal percentage and the 2nd lowest true shooting percentage. Switching from...
So Nico thinks James Wiseman is winning the AAC tournament.
I think James Wiseman would have won the AAC tournament had he been there. Obviously, as I said, it makes me quite sad because I genuinely think Memphis would have been good.
Hey, do
really.
you know what Memphis
I mean, they're
started
still good. They still got a shot.
They're good, but they're not one of the best teams in the country. Anyway, let's move on. We'll take a quick detour from basketball to talk about the Champions League. Now, this week there are 4 pretty big games, but I think that none of them are going to be overturned. Right now, all 4 teams, or all 4 matchups have one of the teams going in with a loss. In the previous game, there were no draws for these 4. And I think that if you look at the 4 games, especially, it's easy to talk about Atalanta, who scored 4 away, hold a 3-goal advantage. It's going to be really hard for Valencia to go to Italy and score 4 away and win by 3. Tottenham, meanwhile, are down 1 to Leipzig away, but they need to score 2. And they don't have Harry Kane, they don't have Sissoko, and they don't have Heung-min Son. They sold Eriksen. I don't really think they have almost anyone who they can get on the offense. Look at PSG. PSG is, of course, at home, but they're down 1 facing Gio Reyna, Sancho, and the Terminator. And the Liverpool game, of course, is probably the most contested one, but Liverpool's on a terrible run of form. They lost to Watford. They lost to the Chelsea boys. Yeah, well, sort of, because they played only their B team. But either way, I think you're going to see Atletico Madrid play like they're going for a draw and just sit back and watch the game go by.
All right, thanks for that, Nico. We haven't had a soccer segment in the history of our podcast, so that's our very first one right there. Nico got to do the inaugural soccer one.
Shout out Chelsea. Shout out Billy Gilmore. I saw you today. I'm really excited for your future.
It's Pulisic or nothing if you're watching Chelsea.
American.
Hey, so what? Man City, man. Man City.
All right, that's enough soccer. I know we don't talk about it much, but we got to move on now to our final segment of today, which is our weekly predictions. So real quick, a little bit about our last month. So as you all know, based off of last week's episode, Phil actually came away with the last place punishment for last month. So as a result, he will be eating a spoonful of Vegemite. So if you're interested in watching him eat the spoonful, tune in to our Instagram and or Twitter, and we'll post a video of his reactions and go through a full play-by-play for that. So definitely won't.
Not looking forward to that.
Yeah, well, our viewers will be able to see exactly how all of that goes down. So just tune in at Not Five Guys, and we will be able to give you play-by-play of Phil's reactions. But moving on to this next month and this week in particular, well, why don't I just talk a little bit about our month ahead? So we have decided on our month's prediction punishment. So the punishment for this month is a loser is going to have to participate in all of the different NFL combine drills. So it's pretty fitting based off of the month that we're in. So none of us are really Michael Thomas or Joey Bosa or Michael Pittman or any of those top guys.
Michael Pittman,
really,
you're calling
Michael
a top guy?
Dude, I had to give a shout out to the most athletically gifted prospect coming out of USC this year.
I mean, he's probably the only good prospect
That's a
coming
lot
out
of
of USC this
balls.
year.
Dude, we've
Most
got
athletically gifted on USC this year.
we've got a first round potential pick. We have an offensive lineman who I'm not gonna lie, I don't remember his name.
Austin Jackson.
Exactly.
Austin Jackson, that's right. I mean, we got a couple decent O-line.
But will anybody beat Austin Jackson's 40 time?
Yeah,
that's
that's
the
a
real
great
question.
I don't think we will.
Nope.
But anyways, before we get to the punishment, we got to start out with our weekly matchup. So the first week of the month, we've got our predictions, not our punishments. We've got our games on slate. So why don't we start out with our very first game for the week, the Bucks at the Lakers this Friday.
I've got to go with the Lakers. AD's back, and the team's healthy again. LeBron's back from a groin injury. So got to go with the hometown Lakers. Mamba mentality forever.
Hey, best team in the East versus best team in the West. 2 front MVP candidates.
I don't think the Bucks are playing the Rockets. I said Bucks at Lakers.
No,
Come
dude,
on,
the
bro.
MVP candidates are LeBron and Giannis. LeBron is, he's leading the team to a very good record. It's not the Rockets. I'm sorry, man.
All right, we'll talk about this later, Jerry. Why don't you give us your prediction?
The Lakers.
Okay.
I am going to say that the Bucks are feeling pretty embarrassed right now over their loss to the Heat. They're going to come back with a vengeance against the Lakers, and I hope to see some fireworks.
I'm going to actually take the Lakers. I know that the Bucks are probably the better team, but I think Friday night at home, LeBron's been playing really well lately. He's been pulling up from Pasadena to hit a couple really deep threes in the past couple of games. But anyways, I still think the Lakers take this one.
Hey, shout out Pasadena. But I'm on the Bucks here. I think the key thing to look at, Nate Silver tweeted this earlier this week, that if you look at the top 8 teams in the NBA, the Bucks are the best of the top 8 teams against other top 8 teams at 9-3, the Lakers are the worst at 4-8. So the Bucks get up for these big games, whereas the Lakers tend to sit back. So I think the Bucks will take it here on Friday night. Then getting back into the college basketball, we're looking at 2 top 15 teams in the Big East on Saturday. You've got Seton Hall at Creighton. Like I said, same reasoning why Seton Hall is going to take the Big East tournament. I think they take this game on Saturday.
I got Seton Hall as well. I think they're going to come out on the road and come away with a big victory.
That makes 3 of us on Seton Hall. Seton Hall lost the previous game to Creighton, but of course they've beaten Villanova. They've beaten Marquette. I think they're probably one of the top teams in this. They're definitely one of the top teams in this conference. They're the number 8 seed overall. I think they come back and they really want to win this game against Creighton.
Hey, don't hate the home teams, man. They beat Seton Hall by 5 last games away, so I believe in Creighton winning this week once again.
We almost made it 5 for 5, Jerry, but going for Seton Hall as well. Looking at both of the teams' records against ranked opponents, Seton Hall has just done better this year, playing against some of the top competitors.
And I might be the only winner this week for that game.
We'll see. All right, so now we're going to move back into soccer with Dortmund at PSG this next coming Wednesday. And for this prediction, we're not going to be predicting who wins that leg, but who wins overall and advances. And I got to go with PSG. Despite PSG losing the first match, they'll have home field advantage for the second one. They'll be looking at getting back at that loss that happened in the first leg.
I did some research on this game, on Dortmund. Man, I can't really find much about them. There's such a hard thing to find anything about them. Like, I look at it on ESPN, they're like, not introduced very well, but they beat PSG before, so I think they can win again at home. No, away game. At away. I think they can win again. And
PSG is at home.
Yeah, PSG is at home. It's really weird. Like, soccer is like on the ESPN, it's like flipped the opposite way. Like
yeah, it is. That threw me off too. But anyway,
they shouldn't do that.
Since you haven't heard about Dortmund, let me tell you a little bit about Dortmund. Right, their current front 3, Gio Reyna, Jadon Sancho, and Erling Haaland, are possibly 3 of the best young players in the entire world right now. Jadon Sancho is the number 1 rated player under the age of 22. I think he's 20 actually. And Haaland has scored like 50 goals this calendar year. He's kind of insane. The one big thing about PSG is they have a lot of attacking talent. Neymar, Mbappe, Icardi, and Cavani, the total of their transfer fees is 500 million or something. It's around that number. And they had less shots overall than Dortmund. So I think Dortmund's really strong. Obviously, they don't have to win this game. They can win by drawing as well. So I think we're going to see a Dortmund win here.
Yeah, I'm with Nick Hill as well. I'm going to take Dortmund. They have the lead. I think they're going to come away with, I'm not going to say that they're going to win their second leg, but I think that they're going to come away with the overall victory.
I think I'm with Kevin here. I think PSG takes it. Nick Hill, you mentioned that Dortmund has a lot of young talent, but PSG has 2 of the best players in the game, not 2 of the best young players. With Neymar and Mbappe up front, I think they're gonna overpower Dortmund at home with this offense and probably take this game 3-1 to advance.
All right, well, that's the end of our show for today. We actually talked a lot about soccer for the very first time, so that's pretty exciting. We like to expand our horizons here on the Not Five Guys podcast and talk about a bunch of different sports. So, who knows? Maybe we'll start talking about golf later on when the Masters come around. But anyways, thank you so much for tuning in to the 6th episode of the Not Five Guys podcast. Once again, please feel free to comment below and let us know what you liked and what you didn't, or if there's anything that you want us to add. We appreciate all the feedback that you have. But with that, we'd like to thank you once again so much for listening. We hope to catch you next week on our next episode of the Not Five Guys podcast.